Tonight on Need to Know, it was a bus ride through Nairobi, Kenya that inspired Daphne Pariser to be the change she wanted to see in the world. More than a decade later, we'll learn how that bus ride led to an effort to change young lives in lands far away from Rochester. Also on the show, we'll meet men on a mission to bring dignity to lives lost to homelessness. Don't go anywhere. An all-new Need to Know starts right now. When Daphne Pariser was 10 years old, she traveled to Kenya with her father. What she saw on this trip would change her life forever. It was on a bus ride through Nairobi when she came face to face with a young boy living in extreme poverty. It was a moment that launched a life purpose for a 10-year-old girl. Fast forward, and the now University of Rochester PhD student is the founder and CEO of Humans for Education. The nonprofit works to empower children and revolutionize global communities by working with locals to help them develop sustainable, long-term solutions to poverty. Daphne Pariser joins me at the desk to share more about her story and her work. And welcome to the show. It is great to have you here.
Yes, thanks. It's great to be here.
So Daphne, I want to know, what do you remember from that trip to Kenya when you were 10 years old and the encounter that you had with that young child that really launched this life mission?
Yeah, so my dad actually won this trip to go on safari, so we got to go for free, which was awesome. And we were super excited about it. My dad had really ramped it up, and I was so excited. And we got there, we had been traveling for, I don't know, 20 hours, and we're sitting in this bus, and I was so tired, and I looked out the window, and there's this kid. We had stopped at a light. The kid came up to us, started banging on the window, asking for food and for money. And I just had this moment of, wait, I don't understand. Yeah. Why am I in this bus, and why is this kid outside asking for food and for money? I had this real moment of, I cannot believe that there are people that live like this in the world. And I had seen poverty in the US before, but it just was such a very extreme reality that I had never seen before. So for the rest of the trip, I did have a great time with the animals, but it really stuck with me, and I cried a lot. And so our tour guide came up to me at the end, and in much nicer words, he basically was just like, stop crying about it, pull up your big girl pants and do something about it. And so I went home and I started researching nonprofits and for-profits. I was clearly super popular in 4th grade, so but that was what the trip was like.
Wow. Well, a lot of people, I mean, we go to places, we go to lands, and we visit, and they leave this indelible impact right on our lives. But in terms of people actually returning and thinking and finding how do I become part of a solution to a problem that I witnessed, that does not always happen, and yet that is what you did. And so I want to know, so you obviously, you're 10 years old, you're a 4th grader, you're researching how to start a nonprofit. What happened, though? Because I know I listened to your TED Talk.
Yeah.
You weren't a college student who went off to spring break partying. You actually returned to Kenya to find out, hey, what do you need and what can I do?
Yeah, so I actually, when spring break came, I had this opportunity to go, paid my own way, which was almost $2,000, but I figured it out. And when I went out there, I didn't have any ideas of how we were going to build this nonprofit. The research that I did was what was successful for nonprofits and what was successful for for-profits, and what made both of them basically collapse. So I didn't really have an idea of what I wanted to put together. So when I went out there, I went and talked to a bunch of community members, and I said, if you were going to get yourself out of poverty, what would you do? And they said education and healthcare.
And these were community members actually living in poverty.
Living in extreme poverty. Yeah. The only way to get there is to turn left at a bush and turn right at a rock. Right. Yep. There are no roads. So when we got there, we were talking to students, we were talking to community members, we were talking to teachers. We wanted everyone's opinion, and everyone had the same one. And I said, that's great, but you don't have the money for education and healthcare. So what would you do? And they said, well, we want to build a small business that will help us pay for education and for healthcare. So it was actually their idea to start the small businesses. It wasn't mine, but we decided to, there was a lot of information that I had learned about small businesses. So we were able to help them do the research and help them actually get started and grant them the money to do it.
So what you did was you, after talking with these families and community members, you I like how you title this, a culturally sensitive solution to reducing poverty. Explain to me the emphasis on making sure that it was culturally sensitive.
So the idea was, we could have put solar panels out there, we could have started a software company, we could have done all of these things. The problem is, most of these people didn't know how to use a computer. Actually, they're phenomenal at smartphones, but computers aren't as ubiquitous. So we wanted to make sure that it was a business that they could run more or less without us. I mean, we wanted to give them some tools, but we really wanted them to be able to succeed even if we weren't there. So what we did was we asked them, what are your skills? What do you bring to the table that we can use to build you a business that is operational and functional in your area? And so they were the ones that came up with cows. And I never would have thought about buying and selling cows. Yeah, never would have thought about it. They came up with it, and we just said, yes, let's try it. So we researched it for like 8 months, and it turns out that it was a really great investment for that area, because those communities basically buy and sell cows and use them as commodity, basically. So it's almost like stock in a way. And they trade them for everything, for school tuition, for books, for food, for everything.
So you started this was at one pilot school, and you started it at this school, and the idea was the folks within the school would help to run this business.
That's right.
And what happened exactly? This was a 1 year, am I correct on this? A 1 year pilot? So what happened after that 1 year? Because I know you did some finance training with them. You explained that you gave them the resources that they needed to really get started, but what happened after that year?
Yeah, so the first year was really tough. We were up against a drought that was the worst drought in 20 years. It was terrifying. We thought all of our livestock was gonna die. We were super lucky. We actually figured out how to build troughs and how to build rain-collected water so that the cows wouldn't die from that. And actually, it wasn't our idea, it was their idea. So the biggest part that we learned was actually that we really need to be listening to them, to what are their solutions to all of these different things that we're seeing with these small businesses. But afterwards, our very first school, Destiny Shaper Primary School in Engoswani, Kenya, they made about $16,000 US dollars, which is a huge deal for people in that area. So their budget's about $10,000 a year. So this really made a difference for them. They used that money to actually send their teachers to get more training. They bought 2,000 textbooks. They added kale to their meal plan, which for some of these kids, it was the first vegetable they had ever eaten in their entire lives. So not only were they trying to give these kids a better school life, they were trying to give them better health. They knew that if these kids were sick, they weren't coming to school. So they invested in a lot of that, and they actually spent some of their money, reinvested it into another aspect of their livestock. They decided to use bees now, and we project that that's going to make $3,000 extra this year for them.
Explain for our viewers who are watching right now, and they're thinking about public education in America, and they're thinking, why does a school have to raise revenue to support itself? So talk a little bit about the educational climate and why the schools want to bring in the revenue as opposed to relying on government funding.
Yeah, so the way that it works in Kenya is some schools can rely on government funding and some schools can't. So here we call it private schools, and I think it's the same. Private schools here typically don't get government funding, but in Kenya, they don't get government funding, but they also typically don't get tuition either. And so without that, you have a school that's built, but nobody's there to maintain it. No one's there to feed the kids. No one's there to buy the books or any of those things. So it's extremely important that the schools have some revenue source so that they can actually teach their kids. Who's paying for the teachers if no money is coming in? Yeah.
That first school was just the beginning, and I want to emphasize that was just the beginning because now we're talking about 3 schools.
That's right.
Explain the growth and the impact that you have seen, and at the same time, also talk about some of the challenges along the way.
Yeah, so one of the things that I really like to talk about is actually how local Rochester has really been extremely important in making this happen. So we've had local Rotary groups, we've had the University of Rochester, we've had a ton of local people volunteer with us to really make this happen. And so actually because of Rotary and the university and all of these different pieces, we were able to open these 2 more schools. And the really exciting piece is that one of these schools was started by this lady who gave up her job, used all the money she had saved her whole life to start a school for 50 orphans who didn't have anything. And because of our programs, she can now feed these kids. These kids were having 1 meal a day. Now these kids have 3 meals a day, and they have an actual facility where they can stay and they can be protected from this harsh environment that they live in. They live literally in the safari. Like, there are elephants and lions that come in all the time. And so so now they have a very safe place where they can be. So this lady actually decided she was gonna save her money. So we have a matching program. Any money that's put into a savings account, we match dollar for dollar to incentivize them to save. So she actually made, the last month, she made $800 from our program. And she decided to use half of that for savings because she is saving to build a new classroom. She started with 50 kids. She now has almost 100 students. We've seen that parents are actually taking their kids out of schools and sending them to schools that we work in because of all of the programs that our schools are now able to provide because they have the money for it. Yeah.
Any roadblocks that you've encountered along the way?
Yes.
After that first year of the drought?
Yes, the drought was awful. The good thing is when we start with schools, we are really careful about making sure that everyone feels like they're involved. So every school has a committee. And this committee is all the elders from that community. So we go through the committee first. So they have to approve all of our work, and they approve all of our budgets, our proposals, everything before we actually start so that they're on board. So we've been super lucky that we actually have had almost no issues in Kenya. One of the biggest issues that we had was a government shutdown, which we couldn't get so here in the US, you get your 501c3 to be a nonprofit, and then you're good for the rest of whatever. In Kenya, you have to renew it every year. The government shut down right when we were going to renew it, and so that made some issues. But otherwise, we've been extremely lucky. On the US side, the biggest thing that we've had issues with is mostly just funding. We have a lot of the business and the methods behind us, but we're really just trying to increase what we want to do. Our vision is not 3 schools. Our vision is 90,000 students. Right now we have somewhere around 1,000. We want to get to 90,000 students, and if we can do that, we can really change the face of poverty for these kids.
Well, you did a TEDx talk titled "Can Millennials Actually Change the World?" And your talk wasn't so much about millennials, but really about the simple things that all of us can do to make a positive change. And I encourage people to check that out because it does it, regardless of age or background. You explain how every single person can be empowered to do something.
That's right.
We have to close for now, but our viewers have an opportunity to learn more about Humans for Education and to get involved in the next phase of work taking place in communities in Kenya. The nonprofit is hosting an inspirational storytelling event called One Step Beyond. That is on Wednesday, June 19th. Doors open at 6:30 p.m. at Comedy at the Carlson. Local comedians and talk show hosts, including yours truly, will share stories about what it means to go one step beyond. 100% of ticket sales will support building a new health clinic that will serve 2,000 families in a community in Kenya. So to get your tickets, go to humansforeducation.org/onestepbeyond. providing dignity to lives lost to homelessness while also helping those in need get into the workplace. That's the driving force of a local program called Memorials Co-op, Inc., an effort of St. Joseph's House of Hospitality. The group creates wooden burial caskets and urns for indigent community members after death. Members of the group are here to explain the impact of this project, not just in honoring the dead, but also in providing more life for the living. Joining me at the desk are Randy McDonald, Program Director, volunteer and mentor Chris Urbach, and volunteer advisor Greg Brooks. And welcome to all of you. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
When we were first introduced to the story, we spoke with one of your colleagues, Don Skillman, and he said he got involved because he was seeing people that he knew being buried in cardboard boxes. And it's an unimaginable thing to think that a human life could be dehumanized in such a way. And I'm curious as to, how did this get started? And at what point did you say, you know what? Something has to change, and we have to honor the lives of those lost who may not be able to afford a big burial like some people have. Randy, I'll give that to you.
Sure. So we actually got started when Sister Grace of the House of Mercy asked for help in getting loved ones buried. She said she had 4 or 5 families a week coming to her looking for help in getting their loved ones buried. And she thought that if she could find someone that would build caskets, then that would go a long way in relieving the cost to that person's loved ones. It was sort of a misunderstanding of how the industry works, though, because the last thing the industry wants is us to be flooding the market with cheaper caskets, if you will.
So based on that, and just in terms of, we'll get into the basics of
Yes.
what you do, but have you had pushback then?
We have had pushback from the industry, and what we've found is that we can create niche markets. One of those niche markets is green burials, and we build a green burial casket that is made without any metal and with all organic glues and pegs that hold it together. And so through our donation program, then people can get green burial caskets. We've also got a link to the Sisters of St. Joseph, where some of the nuns in retirement have signed up to get one of our caskets when the time comes for them. So we've made that link, and we want to plug into, and part of our education program is to inform the public about how much they're spending on their memorial products and how much of their inheritance or their legacy is going to be left over for their loved ones.
I want to point this out. So let's talk about cost when it comes to, because you really are working to serve a need when it comes to the high cost of burial. So Monroe County does provide up to $1,250 for funeral and burial services for people unable to bear that financial burden. But depending on where you look, burials can cost anywhere from $1,000 to $4,000, and that's just for the burial. That does not include things like embalmment and memorial services and things of that nature. So when you look at that high cost, what options do people have if they don't have an option like Memorials Co-op, Inc.? I'll give that to you, Greg and Chris.
I have no idea.
It doesn't sound to me like they have much of an option just to go and hook up with some type of a service, a funeral home, for instance, and they're kind of at the beck and call of the funeral service to say, okay, you're going to need this. This is what it's going to cost. The only thing that we can provide logically is hand caskets with style. That have greater meaning to an individual or family that's trying to say goodbye to a loved one. And I think that's the dignity that Randy talked about is what I think really drew me to the process.
I know in terms of learning more about your work and talking with Don, another option that people were saying was cremation, and that's not something that everybody would believe in, to save on the cost. And this is an opportunity to really bypass something like that, especially if it does not align with one's religious, cultural, ethnic beliefs.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Plus the caskets are are made simply, but they look nice and can be more natural, the green caskets, and then the ones we make, it's simple woodworking. I mean, maybe simple, but they look nice.
I was going to say, so my colleague visited the workshop and we have footage of these caskets, and they're the detail. They're very beautiful. I mean, they look much more than just simple caskets an observer looking at them. Much detail and effort and love for sure is put into each of them. So in what ways, we talked about what Memorials Co-op Inc. offers. What makes this program so unique in our community?
Extend it up so that it
I think Randy better answer that one.
So what's unique about it is that we're developing alternatives to the standard way people are dealt with in the social justice system. So those types of systems are being dismantled in this current political environment, and all the old ways of how do we get people back into the workforce. So what we do is we deal with the whole individual. I'm also a yoga instructor, and so we teach them about life force energy and how they're using it and how they have their own power that they can balance and use to do productive things. And especially chronically homeless people are not very socially minded. They've learned to be recluse and not deal with other people. So we teach them social skills to be able to work with people and to use their life force to do something productive, and it gives them confidence that they can do these things.
So while providing a need, individuals are being trained and they're learning a skill, they're learning social skills, a variety of different things. So talk to me a little bit, Chris and Greg. I want to know, in terms of the individuals coming in and the volunteers that you're working with, talk about the progress that you've seen from folks who are a part of this effort, the volunteers. How have you seen people come in and be changed through their work?
Well, Juan and, can I say their names?
Yeah,
Juan,
absolutely.
Juan and Ryan, they're learning like how to work and how to organize stuff, and they're learning how. We have a lot of fun too, but we're very careful because we're working with dangerous saws and stuff. But I think it's like a camaraderie thing. For me, it's helped me become more confident, and for them, I think it helps them to feel like they're needed and wanted, and that they can do something. Juan, and there's Juan right there. Anyway, he doesn't have a lot of skills as far as woodworking skills and stuff, but I mean, he's learning. I mean, so I do.
He takes a lot of pride.
He takes a lot of pride. Yeah, he likes
a lot of pride.
I like what they're doing.
What he's able to accomplish, and I think that's really important to keep in mind when you are asking these guys to help you make these things, that we're teaching them that self-confidence that they need,
self-esteem and stuff.
Self-esteem, and we kind of give them a kind of a safe zone to work. We're taking them out of the one community, and then we're introducing them into another community gradually. We're bringing them back, and working with them has been fun. It really has been fun, and you kind of take them under your wing a little bit, and realize that you're making a part in their life in your own way. Yeah. However you see things and how you train them, teach them skills that they're going to use maybe for a lifetime.
I learned a lot from them, just the relationship thing going on, because I was homeless at one time and stuff, and I took advantage of the system. The system does work, I think, because if you take advantage of it and you cooperate and you're not, drinking or drugging or causing problems, I think the system, as it is, works pretty well. The home, the shelters and all the other stuff. So I think it's very important to try to get along with people. That's basically what we do there. We get along with each other. I'm sure we have problems sometimes. We have disagreements, but we work it out. So. Yeah.
Tell me about how the process works. So if there is a family or an individual who has lost someone and they need help and they need a casket or an urn, how does it work? Do they come to you? Do you have caskets already available? What's that process like?
So we do have an inventory of caskets, and so normally it goes through a faith-based thing. It has up till now. So part of our outreach is to inform different faith communities and just the community in general on how to tap into this. But we have a donation program that's sort of based on WXXI, kind of in-kindness donation program is what we call it. And so, an example is that for $700, then donation to us, then we'll donate a casket for your loved one. For $1,200, we'll donate a casket for your loved one, and also in that person's name, give a casket to an indigent or someone who can't afford to buy one. So we're developing this program. Another example is that one of our volunteers makes these wooden hip-like toolboxes. And so a product of ours will be that a memorial garden kit. So they'll get this wooden box with everything they need to plant a memorial garden.
Are you finding that you are overloaded with requests, or do you not have? You're shaking your head. No, do you not have as many as you want?
Well, it's kind of this is part of the mystery of the whole thing, right?
As many as we can handle. Right?
Well, and that's the thing. It's a mystery that we don't know how these things actually work, but we deal with whatever comes our way. And so at times, then Chris has put in 2 or 3 days in a row to get a casket ready for a request. Because if someone needs a casket, it has to happen right away. So.
Unfortunately, we are closing in on our time, unfortunately. But to our viewers, you can support the work of Memorials Co-op Inc. through cash donations, volunteer work, or professional equipment. So to learn more, go to their Facebook page, and it is up on the screen right now, facebook.com/memorials.co.op.inc. And a special memorial service remembering the lives of homeless residents in our community who have passed away is taking place later this summer. That's on Thursday, August 22nd at 11 a.m. at the Central Church of Christ. And that wraps up another edition of Need to Know, Rochester's News Magazine. I'm your host, Helene Bianduti-Hofer. Thank you for joining me tonight and throughout the weekend here on WXXI TV. I will see you next week.